My sister's text felt like a knife straight to my chest. It said, "You're a failure. Never come home again." I was sitting at the airport, my boarding pass untouched in my hand, trying to understand how everything had fallen apart so quickly. I had planned to leave and start over, to finally disappear from her life for good. But 2 days later, I got a secure message on my phone. It was from her task force commander. He wrote, "We have a situation. You're our only option." In that instant, everything I thought I knew about my sister, my family, and myself flipped. Upside down. My name is Lena Calloway, and for most of my life, I was the invisible one. I'm 29, a freelance coder, and someone who finds comfort in quiet corners and long nights in front of glowing monitors. I grew up in the same small Ohio town as my sister, Serena Calloway. Serena is 33, a decorated military intelligence officer. Fearless and strong, always the star in our family. Growing up, Serena's medals and certificates covered every wall in our living room. She was the golden child, the one everyone in town admired. Our parents, Marie and Daniel, loved to talk about her achievements at every dinner, every holiday, every barbecue. People would come up to me and say, "You must be so proud of your sister." They meant well, but it always felt like they were asking, "What happened to you?" While Serena led her team across dangerous missions, I hid behind screens and codes. My world was quiet and technical, full of logic and lines of code no one else in my family cared to understand. I spent my teenage years building small programs, creating online security tools, and teaching myself everything I could about cybersecurity. Every time I showed something to my parents, my mom would say, "That's nice, dear, but don't you want to do something real, like your sister?" My dad would just pat my shoulder and change the subject. Serena and I were close when we were young. She used to help me fix my bike, taught me how to throw a baseball, and once defended me from a group of kids who made fun of me for being a computer nerd. But as we got older, her view of me changed. She started to see my quietness as weakness. She teased me about my projects, called them keyboard games, and said I was wasting my potential hiding behind a screen. A few months before that text, I had finally worked up the courage to show my family a project I had spent nearly 2 years developing. It was a powerful security tool designed to protect sensitive military and government data from new types of cyber attacks. I believed it could save lives if it was used correctly. Serena didn't even let me finish my presentation. She cut me off and said, "You're living in a fantasy world, Lena. No one is going to use your imaginary code to stop real enemies." My mother laughed awkwardly and suggested I try something more practical, like helping at the local school. My father just shook his head. My brother, Owen, didn't say anything at all. That night, Serena sent me the text that shattered me completely. "You're a failure. Never come home again." It wasn't just a text, it felt like she had erased me from her life forever. After that, I shut down completely. I stopped working, stopped responding to friends. I booked a one-way flight out of Ohio to anywhere I could start over. Sitting at the airport, I held my boarding pass, trying to find the courage to leave behind the only family I had ever known. I thought that was the end of my story. I thought I would disappear quietly and start over as the girl who was never good enough. But life has a way of pulling us back into the stories we try to run from, and I had no idea just how far my sister's world, and my own, was about to collide. After Serena's text, I stayed at the airport longer than I should have. My flight was boarding, people were shuffling past me, their faces filled with excitement or stress, all moving toward their own destinations. I sat there staring at my boarding pass, reading the gate number again and again, but I couldn't bring myself to stand up. I had spent years feeling invisible at home, and now I was about to make it official by leaving for good. When I finally stood up, I didn't walk to the gate. Instead, I dragged my suitcase to a corner near the large windows and watched planes take off into the gray Ohio sky. I felt numb, like I was floating above my own body. I thought about every holiday dinner where Serena talked about her missions and my parents listened with wide eyes, while I pushed peas around my plate in silence. I remembered the way my mother would introduce me to guests, saying, "This is Lena. She does computer things." As if even she couldn't remember what it was I actually did. My brother Owen didn't help either. He wasn't cruel, but he was distant. He followed Serena's lead, always standing quietly behind her. He never defended me. After that text, he didn't call or check on me, as if he silently agreed that I had failed the family somehow. I booked A cheap airport hotel room and stayed there for 2 days. I didn't answer calls, didn't check my email, and didn't open any social media. I kept replaying Serena's words, "You're a failure. Never come home again." I thought about all the times she used to protect me when we were kids. I thought about when she fixed my bike chain after a bad fall, or when she carried me home after I twisted my ankle at summer camp. Somewhere along the way, that protective big sister had turned into my biggest critic, and I never understood why. While I sat in that tiny hotel room, my mind drifted back to my last big project. My security tool was the one thing I had ever truly believed in. I had designed it to detect new patterns in cyber attacks and stop them before they reached critical systems. I poured my entire savings into building it, using every favor I could get from old colleagues to help me test it. But when I showed it to my family, I saw the disappointment flash across Serena's face before she even spoke. "You're wasting your life," she had said. "You think typing at a keyboard makes you brave? You think anyone on my team would trust something you built?" Those words didn't just sting, they burned through me, echoing in my head for weeks after in that hotel room. I started questioning everything about myself. Was I truly just a keyboard warrior? Was I hiding behind code because I wasn't strong enough to face the real world? I pulled out my laptop several times, thinking maybe I should just delete all my work and disappear completely. During those 2 days, I barely ate. I kept the curtains closed, the room dark and silent. The only light came from my phone screen when I checked Serena's last message, as if somehow reading it again would help me understand. Then, late at night on the second day, I received a secure, encrypted message. At first, I thought it was spam or a prank. The subject line read, "Urgent, task force assistance required." My fingers hovered above the screen. My heart raced as I opened it. The message was from Commander Richard Harlow, Serena's task force leader. "Lena, we have a critical cyber breach. Serena mentioned your name before we lost communication. You're our only option to stop this attack and protect lives. Please respond immediately." I read it over and over, each time feeling my body grow colder. Part of me thought it had to be a sick joke, maybe a cruel prank from someone who knew about the fight with my sister. But as I read the encryption codes and checked the digital signature, I realized it was real. I could barely breathe. My sister, the one who had pushed me away so brutally, had trusted me enough to give my name to her commander as their last hope. The same sister who called me a failure had turned to me when everything was on the line. I stared at the message, my hands trembling. I felt anger, fear, sadness, and an unexpected surge of love all at once. I thought about all those lonely nights coding in my room, all the times I felt useless, all the times I wanted to prove to Serena that I wasn't weak. In that moment, I knew I couldn't run away anymore. I had a choice: continue hiding in a hotel room, boarding pass in hand, or step into the one role I was born to fill. It was the first time in my life I realized my code, my so-called keyboard games, might be the only thing standing between Serena and disaster. And for the first time, I chose to stand up, not just for her but for myself. I stared at my phone for what felt like hours after reading Commander Harlow's message. My mind kept replaying his words, "You're our only option." I thought of all the times Serena rolled her eyes when I spoke about my work, all the times my parents called my passion a phase. And yet, in her most desperate moment, she had given them my name. I closed my eyes and let my head fall back against the cold wall of the hotel room. A wave of old memories flooded in. I saw Serena when we were kids, teaching me how to ride my bike without training wheels, her hand steady on my back. I remembered her standing in front of a group of boys in middle school, fists clenched, telling them to leave me alone. That protective big sister wasn't entirely gone, even if she had buried that part of herself under medals and military titles. I opened my laptop and read the commander's message again, this time line by line. I checked the encryption keys, scanned the code signatures, and realized this wasn't just a random data breach. It was a sophisticated, targeted cyber attack on Serena's task force operations network. Their data had already been compromised, and they were on the edge of losing full system control. If that happened, not only would mission details leak, but lives would be lost in the field. As I processed the files they had attached, my brain kicked into high gear. My fingers hovered above the keyboard. I felt the same excitement and terror I used to feel as a kid when trying to fix a broken game console or solve a complex puzzle. But this time, the stakes were higher than anything I had ever imagined. I thought about running. I thought about turning off my phone, deleting the message, and disappearing. But deep down, I knew I could never live with myself if something happened to Serena and her team because I walked away. I messaged Commander Harlow back, "I'm in. Send me all the logs and give me root access immediately." His reply came fast. "Roger. We're moving to blackout mode. You are the primary contact from this point forward." I turned the tiny hotel desk into a command center. I pushed aside the brochures for local diners and the empty coffee cups from the past 2 days. I laid out my external drives, hooked up my backup laptop, and started building a defense strategy from scratch. Every minute felt like a battle against an invisible enemy. The attackers were smart, constantly shifting tactics and throwing decoy viruses to confuse me. My heartbeat felt like it was echoing through the walls. Sweat ran down my back, and my fingers cramped from typing nonstop between commands. I found my mind drifting back to Serena's text. "You're a failure. Never come home again." The words burned at first, but as I typed, I realized they were fuel. For so long, I had been building walls around myself to keep the pain out. Now, I was tearing them down, piece by piece, with every line of code I wrote to protect her. After several hours, I found a vulnerability in the attacker's system. It was a small crack, but it was enough. I designed a counterattack to flood their system with false data and force them to shut down. As I launched it, I whispered to myself, "For Serena." While I waited for confirmation, I slumped back in the chair, my entire body shaking. I realized I hadn't eaten in almost 24 hours. I checked my phone again and saw a new message from Commander Harlow. "Direct threat neutralized. Network stable. We're retrieving your sister and her team now. You did it." I pressed my face into my hands and let out a sound that was half laugh, half sob. All those nights alone, all the quiet sacrifices, all the moments I believed I wasn't enough, they had led to this. I received another secure message shortly after. "Serena wanted me to tell you she's safe. She says thank you. She said, tell her she's stronger than I ever knew." Reading those words felt like an old wound stitching itself back together. I didn't know what would happen when Serena came home. I didn't know if we could fix all the damage between us. But for the first time in years, I felt my chest open up, my shoulders loosen. I had chosen to fight for her, even after everything. I in that hotel room, under flickering fluorescent lights and surrounded by empty coffee cups, I found the piece of myself I thought I had lost forever. I had stepped up, not as the quiet sister hiding in the background, but as the one person who could save her. When I finally closed my laptop, I looked out the window at the night sky. I felt a calm strength settling inside me, something I had never truly felt before. I was no longer just Lena the failure or Lena the computer girl. I was Lena, the one who stayed when no one else could. And I was ready for whatever came next. After the final message from Commander Harlow, I sat still for what felt like hours. My laptop screen glowed softly in the dark hotel room, casting strange shadows on the walls. My heart was pounding, but, for once, it wasn't from fear or shame. It was from relief and a quiet, rising pride that felt brand new. I kept replaying his words in my mind. "Serena wanted me to tell you she's safe. She says thank you. She said, tell her she's stronger than I ever knew." I read it again and again, almost afraid it would disappear if I looked away. I thought back to the countless nights I had spent working alone, the times I questioned my worth, the moments I almost gave up. Those words from Serena felt like a fragile bridge stretching across all the years of hurt between us. As dawn started to glow through the thin hotel curtains, my phone buzzed with another secure message. This time, it wasn't from Commander Harlow, it was from Serena herself. "Lena. It's me. I'm safe. We're coming back today. I know I don't deserve it, but I need to see you." I read that single sentence over and over. My fingers hovered above the reply button. Part of me wanted to stay angry, to remind her of every cruel comment, every time she dismissed me as worthless. But another part of me, the part that still loved her, the part that remembered the big sister who taught me to ride my bike, wanted nothing more than to see her. I finally typed back, "I'll be here." Later that day, I checked out of the hotel and took a cab to my small apartment. The ride felt surreal. The driver made casual small talk about the weather and local sports, completely unaware that I had just spent the last 2 days saving a military task force from a cyber attack. It almost made me laugh. When I got home, I left the lights off and sat at my desk. I opened my laptop one more time, checking the logs, making sure every trace of the attack was gone. It was all clean. Secure. I had done it hours past in silence. I kept expecting to hear a knock at the door, but when it finally came, I jumped. My chest tightened as I stood up and slowly walked toward the door. When I opened it, Serena stood there in her uniform, looking more exhausted than I had ever seen her. There were dark circles under her eyes, and her hair was pulled back into a messy braid. For a long moment, we just stared at each other. I didn't know if I should step forward or close the door. Her eyes, usually so sharp and confident, were soft and wet with tears she was trying to hold back. She opened her mouth but no words came out. Instead, she dropped her bag and stepped forward, wrapping her arms around me so tightly I could barely breathe. That I stood frozen at first. My mind flashed with memories of her cold words, her disapproving looks, all the pain. But then I felt her body shaking against mine, and my arms moved on their own, closing around her. She pulled back just enough to look at me. "I was wrong," she said, her voice cracking. "I was so wrong about you. I was scared, and I took it out on you. I didn't think I could ever be weak, and you reminded me what real strength looks like." I felt tears well up and spill down my cheeks. "You broke me," I whispered. "But I still came for you." She nodded, her own tears falling now. "I know. And that's why you're stronger than I'll ever be." For the first time in years, I saw Serena as my sister again, not a rival or a shadow looming over me. In that moment, all the anger and sadness between us felt smaller. It didn't disappear completely, but it no longer owned me. She held my hand as we walked into my small living room. We sat on the couch, leaning against each other, talking in broken sentences, laughing and crying in turns. We talked about the mission, about the code, about the years we lost to pride and fear. As we sat there, I realized something important. I didn't need Serena's praise to feel worthy anymore. I had already proven my worth to myself in that hotel room, under the glow of my laptop screen, when I decided to stay and fight. Her apology and gratitude were beautiful, but they were no longer the center of my self-worth. When Serena finally fell asleep on my couch, her head resting on a pillow she used to tease me about, I sat in the quiet and watched her breathe. I felt a gentle warmth in my chest, a deep, steady calm I had never known. I knew the road ahead wouldn't be simple. We had so much to heal, so much to rebuild. But that night, in my small apartment, I wasn't a failure. I wasn't invisible. I was the sister who stayed when it mattered most. And that was more than enough. The morning after Serena slept on my couch, I woke up to find her sitting at my desk, staring at my old monitor covered in code and sticky notes. The sun had started to pour through the window, lighting up the dust particles in the air and giving everything a soft, quiet glow. Serena looked different in that light. She didn't look like the unbreakable warrior everyone thought she was. She looked like my older sister, the girl who used to sneak extra dessert to me at dinner and braid my hair before school. She turned when she heard me shuffle into the room. Her eyes were tired but kind, almost shy. "Your code is incredible," she said, her voice low. "I don't know how you saw all of this, how you built it alone." I shrugged lightly, feeling my cheeks flush with warmth. For years, I had longed to hear those words from her, but now, standing there in the quiet of the morning, I realized I didn't need them to feel whole. Still, they felt like gentle rain on dry earth. We made coffee together in my tiny kitchen. We didn't speak much at first. Serena kept glancing at me, as if trying to memorize every part of me she had ignored all these years. After a few sips, she finally spoke. "I've been living under this idea that strength means never needing help, never showing weakness," she said, her fingers wrapped tight around her mug. "But you showed me that real strength is different. You chose to save me even after everything I said to you. You had every right to let me fall, but you didn't." I listened, letting each word sink in. For years, I had replayed every cruel comment, every dismissive laugh, thinking maybe I truly wasn't good enough. But in that moment, I understood that Serena's harshness wasn't about me being weak. It was about her fear of being vulnerable, of not living up to the image she felt she had to maintain. After breakfast, Serena called our parents. I watched her walk around my living room as she spoke, her voice shaking. "Mom, Dad, Lena saved us. She's the reason I'm standing here. You need to understand that she's the strongest one in this family." I didn't hear their side of the conversation, but when Serena hung up, she looked at me with tears in her eyes. "They want to see you," she said. "They want to understand everything." It felt strange to hear that. For so long, I had imagined what it would be like to have my parents finally see me. But standing there in that small kitchen, I realized I didn't need their validation the way I once did. I wanted to share my story with them, but I wasn't depending on their approval anymore. When I visited home a week later, my parents looked different. My mother hugged me the moment I stepped through the door, her arms tight, her face buried in my shoulder. "I'm sorry," she whispered over and over. My father stood behind her, his eyes glassy, his mouth opening and closing like he was searching for words. Finally, he simply pulled me into a hug and held me without saying anything. That night, we all sat around the old dining table, the same table where I used to sit quietly while Serena shared stories of her missions. This time, they listened as I explained my project, my coding work, and how it all came together to protect Serena's team. I saw real pride in their eyes for the first time. Serena kept interrupting, adding her own praise, her voice firm but warm. "She's not just some hacker in a dark room," she said, tapping the table for emphasis. "She's the reason I'm alive." Hearing her say that felt like a final piece clicking into place inside me. After that day, I started to build a new kind of life. I continued my freelance coding work, but I also began working part-time with the task force as a cybersecurity advisor. I didn't do it to prove anything anymore. I did it because I loved it and because I finally believed in my own power. I also started a mentorship program for young women interested in cybersecurity. I wanted them to know they didn't have to be loud or physically strong to make an impact. I wanted them to know that quiet minds can save lives too. My relationship with Serena slowly transformed. We still argued sometimes, but there was a softness. Now, a mutual respect that had never existed before. We started talking late into the night again, like we used to when we were kids. I learned that forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting or excusing the hurt. It means choosing to move forward without letting that pain define you. When I look back on that text, "You're a failure. Never come home again," I no longer hear it as a curse. I see it as the spark that pushed me to finally step into my own light. In saving my sister, I found my strength. In being called a failure, I discovered what it really means to succeed. And in choosing to stay and fight for someone who didn't believe in me, I learned to believe in myself more than I ever thought possible.